I got started in Youth for Christ about 3 years ago. I was volunteering at Fort Miller Middle School for 2 years, and I came on staff last year at Ahwahnee Middle School and Fort Miller Middle School. First of all, I wasn't even planning on starting the Ahwahnee Club, but Ed, who's my boss, when I was in an interview with him, he was asking me, he's like, "Hey man, what do you think about starting a club at Ahwahnee?" And I was like, "Man, that's awesome. I used to go there." And it's kind of a funny story because I actually got kicked out of there. So Ed was kind of like, "Oh wow, that's a crazy story." So I ended up getting hooked up with one of my friends. He introduced me to a teacher. Her name was Sandra Nagiyamo. Well, I didn't know this, but she was actually my teacher. She's my science teacher. I remember a bunch of times getting kicked out of her class. She would send me out, and at the end of the year, unfortunately, I got in an altercation with an individual, and she recommended to the principal that I actually be kicked out of Ahwahnee. But by the grace of God, I'm actually going back into Ahwahnee now. He gave me extra hours to do that, and everything miraculously came together. And now we have a club at Ahwahnee, and it's amazing. And the teacher hosts it, and they're amazed that I'm there. They're amazed that I'm ministering to the kids. It's kind of like I went from darkness to light in like a complete transformation. So I got the youth pastor from People's Church actually involved, and my first 4 people were 2 people from my church and 2 people from People's Church. And from that, our first club was actually 50 students. And for a high school club, that's like normal, but for a middle school club, there's only so many kids that are on campus. So that's actually amazing for a club to have 50 students in it. And so from there, our club actually looks like 100 students pretty much every week. There's been 400 students that has come this year, and there's been over 100 students that have committed their lives to Christ. I have kids in club that are transsexuals, that are bisexuals, that are homosexuals. They're coming up to me, "What does Jesus think about this?" And they need people to come into their life and disciple them and sit down with them and say, "You know what? This is what Jesus thinks about that." He says, "I want a relationship with you. I don't care what you're struggling with. I don't care what you're going through. I'm accepting you into myself."
I originally got started with YFC when I first came to Christ. And my thought process was so much had changed in my life inside that I wanted to reflect what I felt inside outside. So I kind of, so much had changed the way I felt, the way I thought, what I believed. And I kind of wanted what I felt like was a huge step, a huge growth, and my life really transforming. I wanted to kind of emulate that outwardly. I was raised in church, and I kind of went off the path in my teens. And I know that's a hugely important time. There's a lot of forks in the road at that time. Life-changing decisions are made in those moments at that time of your life. And if I can plant a seed with a kid that maybe the Lord will water later, a seed that will take root and change this kid's life either at that moment or later on, then that was why I got involved. Here's, to me, was the most telling thing. These kids were surrounded by so much darkness that when they saw the light of what we brought, they were like moths to it, how they came to it. We were like aliens almost. We looked like them, so they were like comfortable around us. But then when they got to know us, they were like, okay, these dudes are different. And they sought us out, you know? And you really saw that, and that affected me too. Campus life is huge because it shows kids that you can be bold, talk about Christ, and you don't become an outcast. I think some of my fondest memories as a true child, were in youth group. And I wanted to give that to these kids. When you're a kid, I know there was times that there was no way I would say in a room full of people who I thought were non-believers that I was a Christian and what they were doing was wrong. I was like, man, these kids are starving for a good role model, a positive role model. These kids are starving for a good environment. These kids are hungry for someone to trust, that they know that trust will not be misplaced, someone that will not take advantage of it. Getting involved in Youth for Christ was integral to anything else I do in the kingdom. Anything else I do for God, I would not be able to step into that had I not had the experience I had with Youth for Christ, period, end of story.